happens constantly.
Is it your cat's fault behind you? It might be your cat's fault.
No, she's being
You have
good.
Schwarzenegger's cat behind you, and that he just changes colors.
Yeah.
It's actually Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Here we go. So I have a new live stream constantly.
We should do.
So infuriating.
We should do 15, 20, 30 minutes on Schwarzenegger's cat sometime.
Wanted.
Um,
What is? Oh, because I clicked on my name. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah. Okay, so back to what I was saying. When I was, so we'll just back up a little. Oh wait, let me see if I can get Restream to work while we're here, because I wanted the chat to be replayed in the video. So I gotta look up my passwords. Hopefully this isn't showing on stream. Motorcycles. Oh, but it's back, buddy. It's back. Dashboard. All right, are we live still?
I am what I have.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I have your bears, and I have Einstein's tongue out.
Okay, I went live with low latency mode on, and I was hoping that would be all right, but maybe that was the issue, that my internet connection actually isn't stable enough to stream in low latency mode. So maybe that was my fault. I might have been a little ambitious with it. I made some adjustments to the quality and bitrate and stuff like that to prevent further disconnects and stuff. So hopefully it's better. But to pick up where we left off, Nominal had said earlier the fact that there was only one alleged photograph, is from 1971 or whatever, isn't that enough to wake people up? And oops, pop out. Isn't that enough to wake people up or whatever? And yeah, so quick backstory on me. When I was coming up in flat Earth and coming into that awakening and stuff, and I wanted to get like the opinions of like credentialed people and stuff, and see what they thought about this, like the ISS fake footage and stuff, because I was watching a lot of Level Earth Observer and just other channels that were pointing out, the ISS fake footage and harnesses, green screen edits, literally layering transition errors where the people fade in and out of the scene, they're clearly not in the same scene as the background, that kind of stuff. And so I was like, I'm gonna present these. I'm gonna go on like a main. I'm gonna go talk to like some credentialed people on YouTube and just kind of have like a friendly conversation, because I was watching like FED and they would like their thing was like they would be aggressive and yell at people, and I could see how that would be like a turnoff, and like people aren't going to necessarily respond to you pointing out fakery and stuff if you're like screaming at them, right? Because I wouldn't respond well to that, right? So I took this like innocent approach to it where I'm like, I go and talk to these people and I'm like, hey, here's this weird footage, and they literally would just come up with like the weirdest apologist excuses ever for literally everything. Like not a single one where they were like, "Oh yeah, that is interesting. That doesn't make sense." Like everything was just absolute benefit of the doubt, no scrutinizing, nothing like that. So I was like, "Oh shit." there's a lot of room for deception here if we're looking at this, because I grew up, you know, and especially with the younger generation too, we grew up playing video games and getting into streaming and YouTube and Twitch and all that kind of stuff, and you know, green screen backdrops and all that kind of stuff. So everyone's kind of familiar with all this stuff now. Like people download Photoshop and learn it, you know, in their fucking spare time. You know, and there's just so many avenues where we're exposed now to these video editing techniques and the techniques that are used that um, we the absence of photographs in the ball in its entirety. Yeah. So when I was like talking to these people and they were just like unable to be critical of it, I was like, oh shit, you know, that's another problem. Like I was kind of baffled by it, you know, and then and yeah, so yeah, you would think it would be enough, but to like at least raise some curiosity, because when you know the potentiality of how all that stuff works and you can see the mistakes in it, like there's videos where people go over like video editing, people that have the experience with that, and point out like the augmented reality stuff. It's just it's and they admit, and it's to the point now where they admit to using augmented reality up there. So how could you ever differentiate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the globe picture is never gonna happen. That's a hilarious emoji set there, Lord Racer. Yeah, even the stuff that they get from Discover, we can go over that real quick. You guys are
What
just chilling.
what's Discover?
Discover is a satellite, you know, quote unquote, that they put out there to take images of the Earth. And what this does,
Discover is right up there with James Webb and Hubble
yes,
as far as importance.
yep, they're up there hanging out.
They're hanging out, yeah.
Yeah,
They're hanging out in the imagination or something like that.
yeah. So resources. So in this paste bin here are, and I got help from Icon Science that on YouTube, getting these images and compiling them and all that. And here's a if you're interested, here's a link to how to download them and compile them yourself if anyone's interested. So these are the highest publicly available images in terms of raw data, right? So when you're talking raw image and you go to nasa.com, a lot of people make this mistake when they'll go to nasa.com and they'll go to uh, let's see, Saturn. So you'll go, so like somebody might come here and go image of Saturn of the day, and they might look at this and they might try and do some photo forensic analyzing of it and stuff, or they might run it through what's it called, JPEG sniffer or whatever it is, and they can like read the metadata on it, and what they'll find is like, you know, that it was run through Photoshop and everything. Like they'll get the metadata tags for that. But everything that gets published on the internet for every website, you know, is going to be run through Photoshop just by the nature of how the industry works for video editing and putting together media packages and all that. So it's always gonna you're always gonna run into that kind of stuff when you're getting an image from like a media pack, right? So like if you go to like uh like where would CNN, just for example. Yeah. So like you would go here and you would, like, if you tried to analyze this picture, like you wouldn't learn, like it wouldn't be useful, right? There's nothing you could learn from that about James Webb. But right here, following these links, let me see if I can, has the actual, yeah, right here, the epic. So following this, you can actually supposedly get, nope, that's not it. Oh, this isn't the right link. Fuck. Second. On his channel. I'll get it in a sec. Anyway, there's a place you can go to get the actual raw data from this so-called satellite. So before you see the images like this, right? So when you go to Epic, NASA, whatever, and you go to this and you try and analyze this and download these images and shit like that, you're not going to get anything from it. These are already compiled and all that. So you can actually get the raw data, right? So anyway, I collaborated with I Can Science That, and he downloaded the raw data, compiled it and all that. And we have some raw images here because what we were interested in is the eclipse transits. Because occasionally this thing will take pictures of the moon during eclipses or whatever. So we were looking at the images from these, looking at the shadows, and seeing what we can get. And basically, what this thing does is it takes 3 images, a red, green, and blue spectrum, and then you combine all these on the post edit or whatever, and then you get this colored image that looks like this. But anyway, when you go through the metadata on these and you try and do photo forensic analysis on this, you'll find that these actually have no metadata on them. So they've already been sanitized in terms of metadata. And when you do photo forensics on it, so like you'll get like weird pixelated effects, and then sometimes you'll get the weird smooth blurring effect. You really can't get anything conclusive from these. If people want to believe in them, it's just it's just their belief system, really. The biggest issue I would say in terms of like if you were going to argue with somebody would be chain of custody of the raw data. So like in court, you have to verify the chain of custody of evidence, right? Because if it's tampered with, then the whole case is fucked, right? Like they literally throw out cases over or at least they throw out evidence that can be crucial in a case due to chain of custody issues. And chain of custody with the raw data from the satellite is the biggest issue, right? Because we can't verify where it's coming from, what alterations have been made to it, and anything that was done to it before we downloaded it and compiled the image, it wouldn't reveal any sort of technique about the editing or anything. Like it wouldn't show up in the compiled image that it was altered from our perspective. We would have to be able to verify the chain of custody to know that the satellite transmission received and everything wasn't altered or changed or gone through any refinement processes. And just by nature, and that's clearly it already has, because the metadata and shit was already sanitized from it. And it comes with 2 sets of images, one of which, so these images don't come in the proper orientation. They come like sideways or whatever. And then there's another set that comes with them where they're in the proper orientation. So they've already been compiled and aligned and all that kind of shit. So yeah, the fact that people use these for evidence, and then if we want to get into, you guys want to see something really cool, we can look at the Himawari, because people still think that that's a
real thing.
But that's a real thing. Copy. So this is the public FTP server for the Himawari. Interested? The server doesn't. I don't care. So you can actually go here and download the weather presets that they've already generated for the next like 100 years. It would be cool if they would put a camera on one of those Mars mission rockets and show the Earth. It would probably cost too much since we already know what it looks like there. No, absolutely, man. Like you would want so many cameras on all of this shit that they'd never camera up, They never camera up anything that would just be like, why wouldn't you do that, right? There's more cameras on the setup Big Brother than there are multi-billion-dollar rockets that are going into space carrying equipment that has been made over the course of 20 years and cost probably close to $1 trillion by the end of its completion, you know, after you account for inflation and all that. And they're like, nah, we only need we don't need any cameras actually. Like, okay. So where was the memoir? Actually, how do I go back? We'll just download this and see what it is. Where's the... Put it download to? Oh, I don't even have the... 1 second. Sorry. I didn't have the thing up. So anyway, I logged into the MMORE FTP server. And we were going to look at... Did it make a fuck? Fuck. Where did it download this to? Yeah, user 8. Okay. Yeah, right here. Tim Daily. Ooh, very nice. Very cool. Color the full disc. Any file utilizers? Yo, is that my boy Brad? Is that the young gunner dog?
Brad, any FileZilla
utilizers in the chat?
My goodness.
Dude, that's what's up. So that download. True color thing. Yeah, so they have all these. This isn't the one, but they have all these weather generation things. I'll link you the history of it real quick. And you can tell it looks real because it's so fake. Exactly. Satellite. Yeah, John Thor right here.
So that's where the weather.
So we'll just watch this. But yeah, that's still publicly available, so you can do this. I just went to the wrong section of it, but we'll just watch this really quickly because this is hilarious. This is what broke Bryant Myers' mind.
This is basically what they do. Now, don't take my word for it, as I always say. Go check it out for yourself. Number one, they have already created and stored transparent images of the weather over the oceans using climate simulation software, which they openly admit right here that they've done climate simulations up to the year 2095. But it's actually...
Is there a slight echo in this stream? Do you guys hear that, or am I tripping?
the year 2100 on this FTP server folder, and here is one of the images. And following some of the other images that you can find where the land masses are transparent, and they use all this simulation software to come up with the weather over the oceans. You know, since our weather data comes from our ground-based Doppler radar, and it's impossible to use ground-based systems to cover the entire vast oceans, so that's where the weather over the oceans comes from, their software simulations. Number two, now for the weather over the land, the NOAA has supercomputers that take data coming in from all over the world, Doppler radar feeds, and crunch it all together and combine it with the weather simulation data over the oceans, so they come up with a complete composite weather quote-unquote map, which is then wrapped around a ball in their 3D modeling software programs, just like we've shown countless times in our previous episodes with the Earth and the planets, etc. So then what we get are composite images like this that are created in the 3D modeling software, the current Doppler weather data over land and the simulated weather over the oceans, and it looks like this. So this particular image is on the FTP server and is date and time stamped with October 11th, 2017 at 11:05 a.m. I just chose one randomly. Notice the image shows you the weather for the whole ball and not just part of the ball that is lit by the sun at this particular time. No Terminator line or anything like that, right? Okay, now here's the kicker. Go to the other file folder, which is the images that we get to see and are told are real pictures from space. But what they've simply done is taken the weather map picture of the whole ball they created and they superimpose it over the blue marble data set, just like they said they did. So what you can see here is the final version of what we're spoon-fed and told is a picture taken by the Himawari from space, like, 10 minutes ago. This is the image from the same date and time, October 11th, 2017 at 11:05 a.m. And you can see that the weather is exactly the same. Watch it closely. There's your weather map comprised of simulated and Doppler radar being used to complete a composite image. They do this with the Discover satellite too, the Epic camera from 1,000,000 miles away, they tell us. Ridiculous. Okay. Now, also notice the final image has a Terminator line added in to try and make it look like a real picture from space, which drives a nail in the coffin of the Himawari because the weather data shows it over the whole ball completely. But they have to add a Terminator line to show the Earth only partially lit by the sun based on the time of day that the photo is allegedly taken. So if this is a real picture, how did they know where to put the clouds and weather on the part of the globe with no sunlight? It's completely dark there. It's all right here, guys. They are faking space. Hey, we all fell for it for a long time.
Yeah, so that's all publicly available. And there was a link to that if you want to go download that stuff. It's still available. Recommend doing it once just so you can say you did it while it was up. All right. Now, what were we going to get to next, Jim? Was it a little Dayton Miller, Michelson Morley? Oh fuck! I got you muted. 1 second, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we were going to go to Dayton Miller. If you want to give a brief, I believe you did in episode 4. How many experiments Dayton Miller did over 30 years, specifically 1925, 1926, as he was a big believer in compiling as much data as possible.
So I don't know how many he did over the course of the year. I know it was multiple a day over the year at the same time of day, same frequency or whatever. And then I know that he continued it on for 30 years after that. And I've read that it was like 200,000 or 400,000 total Michelson-Morley experiments over the course of 40 years. And then that's what was analyzed by Maurice Elias, who found that the fluctuation in the fringe shift the fringe shift reaches its maximum and minimum dimensions in accordance with the equinoxes, the summer and fall equinox. And yeah, and so like Icon Science that was saying, it's possible, or Dayton Miller thought that his approach to it was that he would collect a bunch of data and try and reduce the noise from that or whatever. But that's a valid strategy to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So anyway, we'll get into some critiques of it. I can't remember. Did we read this last time, Jim? This paper called A New Crucial Experiment for Relativity, 7-page. Oh yeah, we did actually read this. I remember now. We did. So quick recap here. Refutations and dismissals of Miller's work. People will say they was discredited by Shankland. But Shanklin admits that he didn't even have all the temperature gradient information necessary to make the claims that he made to invalidate the data. So we're going to look at Shanklin's paper here and see, and get the full context on that. And we're going to look at this Demoy guy who does an in-depth account of Dayton Miller's work and of Shanklin's critique. So we're going to see what this guy has to say about it. And that'll probably be the end of the show, really. We'll probably spend like an hour on this and wrap up for the night. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to give my little story from this afternoon, which won't take 5-10 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah, remind me about the story at the end.
Yep.
So why modern Michelson Morley type and Dayton Miller type experiments aren't analogous? They changed in modern experiments. What they do is they change the length of the arm, they change the location of the sensor, or they'll use a medium or they won't use a medium in the vacuum tubes. Because they don't know the cause of the cause of why Dayton Miller's data shows that fluctuation, because they don't know what produces that effect, making the alterations and then doing subsequent experiments, isn't a valid way to extrapolate anything relative to what Dayton Miller proposed, and it's actually just kind of like obfuscation, So if you think about it, because they could have, you would obviously reproduce the experiment analogous to how it was done, right? You wouldn't use arm links that are a different size. You wouldn't move the fucking sensor. You wouldn't add a medium. You would, it's crazy because it's all going to give varying results and none of it's going to be applicable to Miller's work. So anyway, all this is covered here in the 7-page paper. It's a really straightforward read. Highly recommend. A Crucial New Theory for Relativity by Steve Zinn. Let me pull up a link for the boys. Great paper, because as this subject becomes more prevalent in the flat Earth meta of talking about things, we're gonna have to dominate the interferometry aspect of things. And we really are, dude. It was actually really fucking cool, man. I don't know. Did you happen to catch Troubling's show the other night with Caleb on, and they were talking about interferometry and stuff?
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't watch that. I mean, I watched part of it, but not the part.
Yeah, when Caleb was on, they were touching on interferometry, and it was like I left a comment. We're absolutely dominating the interferometry experiments that were co-opted to support the motion of the Earth, because like once you really get that and you can explain that to people, they're like, wait a minute, you mean they actually tried to measure it and they got a result that didn't match they got a result, but one that didn't match their prediction, and then subsequent experiments that were done by Dayton Miller are just hand waved dismissed when they proved they bring a lot of things into question, let's say.
Yeah, and not just a few experiments, but tens of thousands of experiments that every single scientist who ever did one never saw more than 3, 5, 6, or 8 kilometers per second around the sun, where 30 kilometers is what Google tells you.
Yeah, and the fluctuation that they've gotten in the subsequent experiments is due to the fact that the arm length has changed, the sensor location's changed, and the medium is changed. Any combination of these things, like they'll just mix match and think that like, yeah, that's a Michelson Morley. Nah, my son, it's not. So yeah, they really have done a number with this and how they've like obfuscated it, because they produce like this vast amount of like subsequent experiments where they're like, it's tending to zero, it was experimental error, there's actually no motion, blah blah blah. But then they'll claim that Michelson, Gare, Pearson at the same time measured the sidereal rotation of the Earth but they actually can't co-opt the sidereal rotation if they didn't measure the predicted amount for the velocity. For the velocity of the orbit of the Earth around the sun. It's actually super disingenuous on their part to claim that, because to co-opt the results of the original Michelson-Morley experiment, where they didn't get their predicted amount, they had to come up with this coordinate system transformation situation where they come up with another frame of reference and then describe something called length contraction, where they say the molecular structure of the device physically contracted and or apparently contracted, and from the reference frame and from their reference frame of them measuring it, they wouldn't know, because it would have already been contracted, because they're in the facing or they're in the direction of the motion of the
Earth around the sun.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So, thank you. So from their perspective, they wouldn't be able to see. They wouldn't be like, hey, my ruler's 12 inches, and now it's suddenly 11 point, whatever. Like it would always be 11 point whatever from their perspective, according to the theory.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the expectation was 30 kilometers per second, and they got 3, 5, 6, or 8. So the ruler, the 12-inch ruler, probably didn't go down to 11; it went down to 4.
Yeah,
because they were that far off. They were off by if you look at 3, 5, 6, and 8 kilometers per second, they were off either by 10 times or 4 times. Come on.
Yeah, and there's really, they've created, so from that perspective where they have these different variations now, but due to the fact that they're not doing the experiment